Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. Be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video.
So let's start here, though. Let's talk about Drew Brees' successors. Because, Mike, I think there's been some interesting movement in like very limited time, right? Like a time where the Saints aren't even on the practice field. But you've seen a couple beat writers talk about this. Nick Underhill said he kind of agrees with it. I'll ask you this. In this offseason, does it feel like Jameis Winston has started to gain a bit of an edge over Taysom Hill, despite the fact that they haven't even really been on the practice field?
A bit. I mean, man, in a race, he's lapped the field.
Oh, wow.
It's Winston. I mean, come on, you hear it in the tone of Sean Payton. Because I say this about Coach O. People say, well, sometimes I don't quite get it. And I'm like, no, if you listen good enough, he tells you what you want to hear.
Yes.
But you got to listen. Okay, he ain't your wife. So you got to listen. If it's your wife or your girlfriend, you can play like you don't listen. But if you want to hear something, Coach actually sort of lays it out to you. Sean does the exact same thing. He sort of lays it out. And I would be absolutely shocked, T-Bob, if opening day, without an injury, again, that's always part of it, that the starter isn't Jameis Winston. Jameis is going to be the guy. And so I get it, like some people are coming around to it. But the day he re-signed back with the Saints, that was always been my deal. He is the favorite. And if this was a 10,000-meter race, he's lapped the field. So it's his job to lose. Now, Sean can't tell you that, okay? I get it. He's got to say, it's an open competition. But I think in reality, we all know it's Winston's job.
So help me out here, because with Winston, and this is something he's been really good at even since college, right, is he says all the right things publicly. And he's definitely a leader of men. Like, he's been able to get teams to follow him no matter where he's been at and to kind of buy into him. I'm talking about his fellow players. I think it's why you had Drew Brees telling him this is your team now at the end of that last game, right? And so I love to Winston. I'd say earlier in the year when he was talking about how, Brees taught me, don't be married to the result, be married to the decision. And if you get the decision right, then the results will fall. Like, how does he translate all of this saying the right things into the actual on-field results that people are going to be expecting entering a post-Drew Brees era? We've gotten pretty damn used to elite-level quarterback play.
You're going to be spoiled, and you are spoiled with Drew. I mean, he put you in that level. And then when he didn't play up to level, then you got unspoiled with it. Then you started bitching. That's the truth. You're saying people who 5 years ago were, oh, man, Drew Brees is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. Over the last couple of years, come on, Father Time catches up with you. I don't care who you are. It catches up with you. With Jameis, old friend Gay Culverhouse, who was done shows with your dad and I, and her and I became close friends. She passed away last summer. But when he was right after he signed with the Saints, Gay told me, Mike, I'm so interested in this because personally I like him. Gay was the daughter of Hugh Culverhouse, who was the original owner of the Bucks.
Oh, wow.
Still involved in manners in the National Football League. Her biggest concern was the fact, and I agreed with her on this, was the fact that he has moments in which he tries to do too much out on the field. And I think for every quarterback you get put in that spot, he has been blessed from the man above with great physical tools. And so what happens? Okay, you get in a situation where, man, I can put that ball in a tight window. And I know I can do it because I've done it before. And you try to strike it, and it gets picked off. Bad decisions at critical times. But we've seen him also really look impressive as a passer. So this offense, T-Bob, I think is going to look different. It's not going to be Drew Brees-like. Sean is going to adjust his offense to the talent level of Jameis Winston. And if you don't believe it, just think back when Drew was not on the field. He adjusted his offense to Teddy Bridgewater. He adjusted his offense to Taysom Hill. He's going to do the exact same thing with Winston, which is going to mean I think he's going to throw the football deeper downfield. That's something the last couple of years Drew couldn't do anymore. And I do believe that one of the elements that Drew was very good at was getting the football to the tight end. And I was talking to Matt last week about this, that if you go back in his final 3 years with the Bucks, with Cameron Brate and O.J. Howard, those two combined for over 200 catches in a 3-year span.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that part of the game is going to be the same. Now, you got to have Troutman step up. But you're going to see the adjustment here with Peyton to the talent level of Winston. It's not going to be he's calling the same plays for Winston he called for Drew Brees. There is going to be an adjustment period there. How quickly all this meshes, I think, is, to me, the big question mark. Because I think by October, November, that's all going to come together. Preseason is preseason. Come on, it's practice. And this team has stumbled out the blocks, even with Drew at quarterback. That's why my belief is the most important games of the season are the first 3 games.
Wow.
Green Bay, Carolina, New England. And you can say, oh, easy wins. Okay, if you play in Green Bay without Aaron Rodgers, I would say, yeah, Green Bay is a different team with Aaron or without him. But with Aaron, that's a tough game. Really, really tough. You look at Carolina in that game last year in the Dome, that field goal missed by, a half a length of a football? That would have sent it into overtime. You think about the Patriots, and how they'll look this year with Belichick, with going out and doing something unusual and spending a ton of money in free agency. How quickly that comes together for them. But all this hee-haw, some of these other guys went, oh, man, let me tell you about that late October game and that early November game. Okay, genius, look at Sean's record in October. The Saints have been terrific in October and early November. That has been the best part of Peyton and his teams over the last few years. They hit that stride come October. So my thing is the first couple of 3 games of the season and how well it will mesh with Jameis and that offense. Because there's going to be a little adjustment here. No matter what, we saw it with Brady and the Bucks. It took them, mid-season before we really started to see that sort of come together.
Yep.
And so he's certainly the guy, and he does have some pieces around him. And what a lot of people don't look at is, T-Bob, this team played, 80% of the games last year without Michael Thomas?
Yep.
And look, the numbers he put up before that. You got him coming back. I think the development of Troutman is going to be something everybody keeps an eye on in training camp. With Traquan, can he be that number 2 guy? Marquez Callaway, he didn't look like a rookie last year. I mean, he looked like a dude that belonged in the NFL, looked like he had done it before. And so, and you still have Kamara. You're starting 5 offensive linemen are back. So my thing is, man, those first 3 games are critical. Really critical for this football team because you know who you're chasing now this year. It's unprecedented. No Super Bowl team has ever brought back 22 starters and every member of a coaching staff.
Gross.
Man, you think about that, and that raised the sweat off you. No matter if you beat them in the regular season or not. They're a football team that, Hank Stram told me this years ago, doing shows on another station. He was like, man, Bayou, let me tell you something. Once you're drinking from that silver chalice, nothing else tastes the same. And, and I think about that when you think about Super Bowl teams, because you can get a little bit of fat cat in you. Okay, we won it last year. We'll win it again. It's difficult to be back-to-back champs. But you never had a situation with every starter back and every member of the coaching staff back, which to me I think is critical because players are 1A, but coaches are 1B.
So when we left off, Mike, we were discussing Jameis Winston, the lead that he has, how Sean Payton's going to tailor his offense. I still think I want to explore Winston a little bit more, but before we do that, it was a bit interesting to me, especially now given some of the context that you provided. But earlier this offseason, Taysom Hill saying that he was training exclusively for quarterback this offseason. And look, certainly a camp competition still has to be had, right? But is Taysom Hill doing himself, and kind of by extension, maybe even the Saints, a bit of a disservice considering how much he is paid, that he seems to be training at the position where maybe he doesn't represent the greatest value to the team?
I think you got to be smart with Taysom in the fact that, Jimmy Johnson says it best. If you're going to have a championship team, you got to have a great quarterback. And number two, you better have a really good backup. 17 games is a long NFL season now. And that quarterback's going to get rocked. Can he stay healthy is going to be a key. But secondly, you have a guy that can come in and sort of take over. And Taysom understands that that's his spot today. He's going to be the number two guy. So you won't see him probably as much maybe in the slot as the receiver, tight end guy. But he is still going to play a major part in what Taysom does best. Short yardage, red zone areas where he's a power runner.
Yeah.
I mean, so why wouldn't I use him there? I would have a long debate with myself if I was Sean, what I'll do with him on special teams. Because I think at times, and your dad used to tell me this about Anthony Carter, that, he was never a full-time punt returner. But, man, when they needed him, it was like, AC, get on the field. Go return that punt. Get us something. And maybe there are going to be moments where, you're going to say, hey, Taysom, get on the field. Make something happen on special teams. So you're going to have to pick those moments. So you're going to have to pull him a little bit from some of those extra duties, maybe split out as a flex tight end or wide receiver, because he is your legitimate number two guy, and you want him to be involved in those short yardage red zone type plays where he's very good at. He's unique. Okay, here we are, a couple of years into it. Doesn't everybody talk about, man, we'd love to have a Taysom Hill on our team. Man, we're looking in college. Well, I'm going to pick that guy. I think he's a Taysom Hill type player. I ain't seen another one.
Well, yeah.
And so I think you got to walk the fine line, and some of that will, I think, change from week to week with Taysom, where depending on who you play is how you use him. And, that was sort of like that the last couple of years with Drew. And, at first, everybody's reaction was, why are you taking number 9 out of the game, so to speak, and putting in Taysom? So now he's built a niche for himself. But I think where you're going to see him less is being used as that flex sort of wide receiver tight end. You're going to see that less. He's the legitimate number 2 quarterback, and I think I would be a little bit patient with him in using him on special teams, just because of the fact that I don't want to get him hurt there. And the most amazing thing was, when you think about it, he was hurt every year in college at BYU. Every year he got hurt. Since he's been with the Saints, he got hurt late last year. But, man, he has really been a guy, and he ain't faking people up their jocks. He's trying to run you over or run past you. That there's no, kind of, well, I'm going to evade you. No, he tries to run you over as a runner. So, he is who he is. And so you almost sometimes have to protect himself from himself as a runner. And, again, man, if I needed something on special teams, my thing is, hey, Taysom, make us a play. Go make us a play. If it's trying to block a kick, if it's on a coverage situation late that we need to pin them down, I would use him. But that also, I think, is going to get cut into. He is a unique football player that you cannot compare anybody to him today in the NFL.
Yeah.
Cannot compare anyone to him in what he can do in his skill set. Now, Tim Tebow had that opportunity because Sean's idea for Tebow in 2012 was for him to play that role. But when you think about Tebow, even back then, he didn't have the speed, outright speed of Taysom. Physically, when you see Tim Tebow, a person, the first thing that catches your eye is how big he is. Tim Tebow's a big guy.
Yeah. And,
I think Taysom can throw the football better. I know he can throw the football better than Tebow can. But it's Hill's speed that sort of separates him, where really Tebow was a power runner, to be honest with you, and similar in that fanfare to Taysom. But, man, Taysom's got another gear that he's out in the open field. He's outrunning people. Tebow's not doing that. Even back in 2012, he's not doing that.
Yeah, Taysom, he might literally be the fastest guy on the New Orleans Saints, or at least closer to it than he has any right to be. Let's move outside of quarterback for a little bit, Mike. Talking to Mike Detillier here on AFR. What are the early returns on Peyton Turner, the first-round pick? Obviously, kind of stuck in a lot of Saints fans' craw. It felt like maybe you were drafting another sort of project defensive end on the heels of Marcus Davenport, who you paid a much higher price for. What's the early returns around the building on Peyton Turner?
I think as advertised, here you get a guy who is a multiple position player. I watched him at Houston. He played defensive end. They kicked him inside the defensive tackle. Man, he's got a wingspan like a big condor. I mean, that's unusual. I mean, he's got a wingspan. Now, people talk about, this guy got a wing. No, when he spreads them arms out, he's a big guy. And he can run. He's a really good athlete. My two biggest concerns about Turner, he was never a dominant player in college. He was a good player, but he was never a dominant player. Come on. You can write that. If you write that, you don't really believe what you write nor saying. He was never a dominant player. And look at the competition he was going up against. He wasn't playing in the SEC. He wasn't playing in the Pac-12. He wasn't playing in the ACC or the Big Ten. He was playing at Houston. And he was never a dominant player. He at times showed you flashes of being a really good player. And secondly, he didn't miss a lot of playing time on the field, but he had a lot of injuries. You go back from his senior year of high school all the way through. Hey, Bob, I don't remember another guy who had two broken hands playing at the same time. He did that as a junior. Both his hands were broken, and he played through that. Last year he had the quad injury, hamstring. He had a knee injury. He had a shoulder that gave him some issues at times. Man, I hate to say this, but I've done this for so long. That sort of thing follows you. You're playing 12, maybe 13 games in college. Now you're playing 17. You just hope he can stay healthy, and hopefully he can turn potential into production. But, that's why, they're paying Ryan Nielsen a lot of money. He's not at LSU today.
Yeah.
Sean understood, man, I got to keep Ryan Nielsen.
Good point. It's a really good point.
And so he did what he had to do to keep Nielsen. And I think Ryan's been one of the best assistant coaching additions that has happened under Sean. And his technical work and how he gets the very most out of his players. Is this a future pick? Could be. But also this is a pick. Pete Jenkins and I were talking about this a few weeks back. Matter of fact, his line camp. Hey, you got to come down for that one time. For the Louisiana line camp, which is this weekend starting up. We have a record-breaking group, 612 young men.
Yeah, talk to Coach Roderick
you
about
know a little bit about offensive line work.
Yeah.
Come on. And Pete told me this. He said, Mike, more and more, a couple of things are going to happen. He said linebackers are going to look like safeties. Because we were talking about LSU, and he was like, the day of the 250-pound linebacker, every once in a while you might find one, but you ain't going to find a lot of them. that linebacker is gonna look like a strong safety today. They got to cover. And he said, secondly, I do think we are in an era that we're going to be in for a while where a smaller defensive tackle, in essence, he says, I think what you're going to see is guys that are defensive ends get swung inside because you know what? They can rush the quarterback. Because if you can't get pressure on the quarterback, you're in trouble in college, in high school, or the pros. If Turner can, and I think that will be his deal this year, to be kicked inside, obvious third down situations, obvious second and long. Hey, get in there, rush the quarterback. And he's got an athletic mismatch when he goes up against a guard. So I think, him staying healthy and him getting some seasoning that the rookies didn't get a year ago is important. I'm playing him, a lot during the preseason. I want him in there because I got to get him ready for the regular season. The same thing as Passimo. I got to get him in there because you know what? I think you're going to see Tano and also Turner used a lot as defensive tackles. Because my thing is, if I can get Davenport, if I can keep Davenport healthy along with Cam Jordan, and I kick those two defensive ends to defensive tackles, Hoss try to block that when you're throwing the football, and the fact that they're long arm, they disrupt the view of a quarterback and can knock down a throw. And so what Pete, I think, was telling me is actually, I think what you're seeing from the Saints are going to see. That, okay, you lost Sheldon Rankins, you traded off Malcolm Brown, and I thought Malcolm was a really, really good run stopper.
Yeah,
I thought he did a great job in that department. But now, here you in a situation where you need pass rushers. And I think that now, as Pete brought up to me, the defensive tackles are going to look like ends, and the linebackers are going to look like safeties. I think more and more now you hear that from NFL teams. That's just part of the change of the game. This ain't your grandpa's world. This ain't your dad's world of football no more. It's totally changing on that side of the football because if you don't get a pass rush and you give these quarterbacks a chance to throw, the biggest change, T-Bob, I can tell you in my 30 years or so doing this is the quality of the receivers that are coming out now. You got freshman receivers that look like they've played, 4 years of college, and they're freshmen. Why? 7-on-7 changed the world. Not only are they playing all these high school games, but they're all in these 7-on-7 tournaments. Extra games for them to go up against some of the top defensive backs. What people got to realize is now every young man wants to play, if he's a top athlete, I want to play receiver. And we see it at all these camps down here. You go up to this 6'5" or 6'4" young man, would you play on defense? Oh, no, sir, I don't play defense. I play wide receiver. Oh, I'm a flex tight end. Years ago, that guy's rushing the quarterback. So I think to offset what you are seeing in college and pro football is this better grade of wide receiver. How do you match up? You can't just match up coverage. You got to get a pass rush. That's why it was important for O to re-recruit his defensive lineman back on this team to get that alligator come back for another season. And to get other defensive Glenn Logan to come back for another year. It's so important because it's all about, you got to stop the run. I get it. But, man, it's about putting that quarterback on his backside. And so for the Saints, it's getting the right four in these NASCAR packages to get after the quarterback, especially on third down, get them off the field, put my offense right back on it.
Mike, let's shift gears to LSU for a question here because earlier this week, now granted, whatever, we came up with this number kind of organically a few weeks ago. I don't know if Vegas just made it official this week, but for whatever reason, it re-entered the news cycle. But Vegas putting the LSU Tiger over-under win total at 8.5. What say you, Mike D, over or under?
No, I know my money's on over.
Yeah.
And it's already been placed in case they, sort of adjust that number to 9. And that would make it a much more difficult decision
Absolutely.
if it was 9.
Absolutely.
Because you could see possibly something happening. T-Bob, same thing with the Saints. I feel about LSU. That first game's critical.
Yep.
LSU's a better team than UCLA. No question about it. But, hell, we talked about LSU being a better team than Mississippi State last year, and they get their ass kicked.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is that game is so important because that sets the tone for the season. You're out west, playing in a Rose Bowl, and playing up against a coach like Leach, who they're going to throw the football. They're going to test you secondary-wise of, okay, you say you got all this fixed. Okay, now prove it. And we're going to go after you. They're not going to muscle you up. They don't want to do that because, LSU's got the advantage there. So how well that game goes, I think will say a lot about the season. LSU's the better football team. But if you win that game and come out of that with some confidence, look how it rolls through a stretch now. Okay, you're playing an Auburn team with a new head coach,
yep.
a new scheme, everything around there, and there's some adjustment. Florida, look who's playing quarterback for them in comparison to who you've had to play the last couple of years. That dude Kyle Pitts. Now you didn't play him last year, but the year before you're still trying to cover him, no matter what you did. I mean, he was awesome against LSU. They have first-round pick wide receiver. Secondary, I don't know what they were doing last year. I'll be honest with you. I was totally confused.
They were Bo Pelini. You can guarantee Durante Jones will not do the same thing.
Yeah, but man, it just wasn't that one, kind of awkward play. Their whole secondary looked like there was total confusion.
Yeah.
And yet they put a lot of emphasis on that. If I asked you today, tell me Florida's best front seven player, who would it be? Okay, if you got to think, you know what that tells you? They don't have one.
Yeah.
So now you're playing them, but you're playing them in Tiger Stadium. The Kentucky game, you understand. No, Kentucky is like one of these guys that stick you the middle finger and say, okay, we're going to run the football. I dare you to stop it. They're not coming out throwing the football 50 times a game or 40 times a game. They're going to run it at you. So you know what you're going to get out of Kentucky. Their defense has always been good. They play really good front seven defense, but they've lost some key people in their secondary. One of them, Kelvin Joseph, who's in the NFL today.
Yeah.
So, man, you could run this if you can beat UCLA and get some confidence. And roll this with some momentum into the season, man, you got a shot to maybe get to Alabama undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you understand who they are. And no matter what they lose, what they got. By the time you play them young players is experienced players now.
Did you see the blue chip ratios the other day, Mike? I think Alabama's now up to 84% blue chip prospects on their roster. 66 for LSU, which is fifth in the country, but that's how wide the gap is.
Well, I told you, Pop, this. You had a lot of coaches that broke rosary beads when Saban signed that extension. You're praying on the rosary bead that maybe he might walk away from this. And now you're saying, oh, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And they've got a lot of coaches with that stone in the graveyard that said, oh, we're going to match up well against Alabama this year. And very few have done it. And you're playing A&M, who I don't know what they're going to look like offensively. They got a stud back. But man, you lose your starting quarterback. You lose some key people along the offensive line.
Yeah.
Your defense is really good, though. Jimbo told me this may be the best defense he's ever had.
Ooh.
Coming back, and that's scary because that defense last year was pretty good.
Yeah.
And you got that defense, most of it coming back. So you understand late you're going to catch Alabama, you're going to catch A&M, but offensively. Last year, their offense wasn't special against LSU.
No.
Man, Kellen Mond, he was all over the board. He was fortunate to make a few connections. LSU just couldn't get anything started on offense against A&M. But, man, to me, this looks like a 10-win type team, to be honest with you.
I think I'm inclined to agree.
That's the way I look at it. They look like a 10-win football team. And it's a line from a movie, but I told this to Bebe last year. Hey, it's not about talent and coaching now. You know what it is about? How you handle success.
Yeah.
Eye of the tiger.
Yeah.
You lost it.
Yeah.
It's a line from a movie, but it's true. Okay, you weren't as hungry as you were the 2 years before. And, yeah, you lost a lot of people to the NFL. And, yes, you lost some coaching people. And it didn't fit some of it. And you had to make the moves. But the biggest deficit was it seemingly looked like those young men thought, I'm going to just throw my helmet out. We're going to win. We're going to win because we LSU. It don't work that way. You gotta hustle and work and have some, credence to working together as a group that they didn't seem to have. And that falls across the board, top to bottom at LSU. You lost the eye of the tiger. Now, late in the season, what happened? You got your teeth kicked in enough that you said, I'm not taking this no more.
Yeah.
Okay, and you beat Florida in Gainesville. Now, okay, were they looking ahead? Okay, so what? You're supposed to play that day. And you didn't come with your A game. And then, you play a shootout game against Ole Miss. And thank God, Elijah didn't play that game because, he may have put up 400 yards receiving. But whatever, it's you needed to almost get humbled to understand that you got to work at it. And I think this football team was humbled last year.
Well,
that man, we didn't get beat. We got beat up.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
and I think
I say it all the time, Mike. I'm sorry, we're about to go to break too, but I've been saying it too to the officer. Same thing that you're saying. It's like we rarely think about the challenges of success, right? Because you're always trying to climb that mountain.
Right.
But once you get to the mountain, the problems don't go away. There's just new problems. I do know this though. There is nobody better than Coach O at recovering from bad situations and bouncing back, which is one of the reasons that I'm right there with you. I would smash that over. 9-3 feels like this team potentially 10-2. Hashtag Ask Mike. Brian Fletcher says, do you think Brad Davis will have all 5 of the same starters on the LSU line, or should some of those starters be nervous?
I think if everybody's healthy, it'll be the same 5. I listen to what O says. I don't need an interpreter with him. And has he brought up anybody other than Anthony Bradford?
No, but Anthony Bradford did look really good in spring. He was one of the big risers to me. So I think they have 7 guys that can play, Mike. And
I sent him this last year. The 2 positions that get hurt the most in college football, offensive guard, offensive tackle. So you better have some depth. And you know one thing, after this year, that's a whole new offensive line.
I know, dude. I'm very nervous about
all
it long
5.
term. Very nervous long term. We talked to Shay about it earlier. Hashtag Ask Mike about that donkey. I don't know if I completely know the context here, Mike. Are you feeding a wild donkey?
Yeah, right next to me I have a field where they have cattle, and they got 2 donkeys there. And listen, whatever you might think about a donkey, he got no common sense, and that he got no fear of anything. So, living out in the country, they got coyotes and wolves and everything else. And so he comes at 3:00 every day, and I feed him. And he lets me know when he's right next to me because he hollers.
Oh,
I mean, an ear-piercing type of holler that, the neighbors are like, oh, my God, what's going on? Now they've gotten to the point where they're used to it. But he caught a bobcat, and he got it up against the corner.
What?
And with one swift back kick, he smashed his head in by the time and was hollering. And I jumped the fence. It was like at 4:00 in the morning. And that bobcat was DOA. But he got no fear of the bobcat. What he fears is the bald eagles that are in a tree about 50 yards from me. Because he goes eat underneath the tree. You eat that grass. And he don't see something come out of the sky that big other than a plane.
Oh, my
and when
God,
that mama bald eagle come after him, he takes off.
Oh.
And you hear the footsteps of him down the stretch. He's almost like a championship horse. trying to hit the track.
I mean, on the ecosystem in your yard right now, it's incredible. Also on the donkey, who's the real predator? Okay, here we go. Hashtag Ask Mike D. Is it true that Buddy D once wagered on whether or not a cat could cross the road without getting hit?
No, it was actually a rabbit.
Okay.
We got caught in a heavy downpour rain late in August. We were talking at home, him and I. He got lost. He got caught on old Highway 90. I backtracked to get him, and he's in a bar, and he's holding court like it popped. I mean, he's holding court in there. And they got money bet because there's a wild rabbit trying to cross Highway 90 to get to the other side. And Buddy bet against the rabbit. Buddy won. The rabbit didn't make it. They had an 18-wheeler pass and caught that rabbit. But it wasn't a cat, but it was a rabbit. So the story's fairly close to being correct.
Oh, my God, Mike. Thank you so much for joining us this hour. This has been so much fun. As I said, it's been too long to have gotten to do radio with you. Mike Detillier, M&D Draft Report, NFL, college football analyst, MikeDetillier.com. You already know him. You love him. Mike D, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, T-Bob. Appreciate it, bud.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.